Thank you, Pak Taufik Matar. Apakah saya bisa didengarkan?
Very clear.
Okay. Apakah suara saya tidak menggema?
Tidak.
Oke, terima kasih. Honorable speakers, excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, dear colleagues, friends, welcome back to the second session of the third International Conference on Social Science and Islamic Studies, ICSIS. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. My name is Ros Mahtami. I will be your guide through this session, and I am so delighted to see you all that you are eager to engage for the issues of social science related to the Islamic studies. Our university, UIN, Universitas Islamic Negeri, have an outstanding research and studies on the issue of social science and religion. Today, we gather here to discuss our current problem faced by our world related to the issue of social science and religion. And here, we are so lucky that we have Professor Najma Musa from South Africa, a professor of law from the University of Southern Cape in South Africa. I would like to greet Professor Najma first before we continue the presentation. Hello, Professor Najma.
Assalamualaikum.
Waalaikumsalam
Professor
warahmatullahi
Rasmatani,
wabarakatuh.
Dr. Rasmatani. Thank you very much for inviting me. And can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay, good. Okay. Please let me know when I must start. Should I start?
Okay. Let me introduce you first to the audience. Ladies and gentlemen, Professor Najma last year were here to talk about Sheikh Yusuf, and that topic led us many to know better the journey of Sheikh Yusuf to the Cape Town. And today, Professor Najma will talk about different topic, and the topic is about bride price. Bride price is also largely known in South Sulawesi in Indonesia, particularly in Indonesia. Here we have many different terms for the bride price, like mahar and also uang panik. And every man know what is uang panik in Makassar. And also in the customary law, we are familiar with the word sundrang and sompang. So what Professor Najma will talk about today is not, it is very familiar to the people here in South Sulawesi and also South Sulawesi, because like in Aceh, in Lombok, also the society and the Muslim society very familiar with the bride price. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, I would like to invite Professor Najma to present her paper on the title, The Implication of Recent Fatwa Linking the African Customary Marriage Practice of Lobolo, bride price, they call it Lobolo, to Muslim marriage, nikah in South Africa. Please welcome Professor Najma Musa. Silakan.
Terima kasih so very much, and assalamu alaikum once again, and good morning. It's good morning from South Africa. I suppose it's good afternoon in Indonesia, and I would like to thank Alauddin University and its staff and the committee for the opportunity to once again present at the conference today, and a special thanks also to the moderator of the session, Dr. Rosmatani, and to Tawfiq Matar and the other members. So as Dr. Rosmatani has indicated, the title of my presentation is to speak about the implications of a recent fatwa or a ruling by ulama linking the African customary marriage practice of bride price, which is called lobolo, and there are many other names for lobolo in different African names, but I will just mention the most common one. And how is it linked to Muslim marriages or nikahs in South Africa? Now, if we, I also submitted an abstract of the paper, and if you look at the abstract, it will tell you that the final constitution of the Republic of South Africa of 1996 officially recognizes customary law. So customary law is the personal law of indigenous Black Africans who constitute the majority of the total population of South Africa. Now, since 1998, 2 years after the final constitution, African customary marriages are also formally recognized. So customary law and customary marriages are formally legally recognized. So the practice of lobolo is a traditional custom where the groom or his family pays a negotiated sum of money or goods to the bride's father or the bride's family as part of the process of getting married under customary law. So unlike customary law, Muslim personal law or Sharia is not formally recognized in South Africa, although Muslim marriages, nikahs, are in the process of being formally recognized. And so what happened in August of 2022, which is a few months ago, indigenous Black African ulama, they introduced a fatwa based on the Sharia that seeks to carve Islam as an inclusive religion that celebrates the African tradition of lobolo. So this fatwa permits the payment of lobolo, of course, in addition to the mahar or the dawah that Dr. Rosmatani was talking about to the bride, in the case of a nikah, between Muslims who are also African, because it maintains family ties between the couple and their non-Muslim families. So my presentation briefly examines the implications of the fatwa on Muslim nikahs and the equally guaranteed rights in our constitution to practice both religion and culture in South Africa. So I have a copy of this fatwa, a physical copy of the fatwa if anybody is interested. And I have supplied also the sites where the full recording of the version, the live stream version of the fatwa when it was made available to the public is also available on YouTube and on Facebook, and that is in the abstract. So basically what happened, 10 months ago in South Africa in August of 2022, this new fatwa was issued by indigenous ulama, which brought to light several challenges faced by Black African Muslims regarding the relation of nikahs to African customary marriages, practices like the payment of the lobolo. Another name for it is mahadi and many different African names. Also, we have many different languages in South Africa. But technically, it is a bride price or a marriage settlement by the groom to the bride's father. If it is not paid, it will have an indirect impact on the recognition of the marriage by the family and the rights of wives and children to inherit in terms of customary law. So in South Africa, as I've indicated, customary marriage is formally recognized, but not a nikah, but this is about to change after many years, and hopefully by 2024, we will have recognition of the marriage. Now, South Africa is a young constitutional democracy. I spoke about the final constitution of 1996. So we are only a 29-year-old democracy. We have a multicultural and a multi-religious society. So legal pluralism currently characterizes the legal system. However, Muslims came to South Africa from Indonesia, Malaysia, and India more than 350 years ago, during periods of colonial rule. And today, Muslims constitute the largest religious minority in South Africa, but they are only about 2 to 2% or close to 2 to 3 million of the population, and the total population is about 61 million. So customary law was the first legal system to have operated in South Africa, even before Sheikh Yusuf, for example, came to South Africa. But it was denied full and official legal recognition until democracy, and only in 1996 we see that it is recognized, which is about 29 years ago. So customary law is the personal law of the majority of Black Africans, and they constitute about 81% of the total population. So about 49 million of 61 million people are Black African. So in 1998, 2 years after the final constitution, we have recognition of customary marriages, African customary marriages, both monogamous and polygynous customary marriages, where the man can have any amount of wives, for example, in terms of a dedicated customary marriages act. So most Black Africans have a Christian background because the majority of the population are Christian in South Africa. But a fraction of Blacks are Muslims, and their numbers are increasing. They are either born Muslim or most have converted to Islam. So we have high-profile marriages already of Black Africans with Muslims. For example, just you all will know Nelson Mandela. So his grandson converted to Islam, and in order to marry a Muslim woman who's also from Malay Indonesian origin, and they got married in terms of a nikah. And then we also have recently our former judge president of the High Court is a Black man. He married also a Muslim woman of Malay Indonesian origin. He converted to Islam, and they got married in terms of a nikah. So, but these marriages also end in divorce. So we need to know whether the marriages are recognized, what is happening. So they got married in terms of nikahs and not customary marriages, right? So that is something. So unlike customary law, I indicated no religious law is recognized in South Africa, regardless if you're Muslim, Hindu, or Jewish, your marriages are not officially recognized in South Africa. So now, as I've indicated, this is about to change because the Constitution makes provision for it, and we have a Constitutional Court judgment which makes allowances for it. So now in Sharia, polygyny is recognized in customary law and Islamic law in state, non-state systems like Islam. So a man is allowed to have more than up to 10 wives, unlimited wives in terms of customary law. But under Sharia, a man may have up to 4 wives, while women only can have 1 husband. So identifying what is meant by customary law is challenging in South Africa because we have 3 different forms of customary law. We have living customary law, official customary law, and mixed customary law. So all are sources of customary law. So according to the living customary law, which is the actual practices on customs of this indigenous community, it includes unwritten customary practice regulating daily activities. Now, these differ in South Africa according to your ethnic group and the regions where the people live. So official customary law is applied by courts and state institutions, and its sources includes codes of law, legislation, court cases, textbooks, etc., and the act that recognizes customary marriages. So now we see the Customary Marriages Act, which recognizes the customary marriage, doesn't spell out the rules of customary law. So living law, rather than the official law, is deemed to be a more accurate representation of the customary law regarding the regulating the actual lives of people. So what we have is mixed customary law is actually a result of a reform of the customary law in terms of the succession and marriage laws so that it applies to South African law. South African common law, which is a mixture of Roman law and Roman Dutch and English law. So in other words, we, instead of decolonizing our laws, we have made our laws now to fit into common law. So that is basically what has happened. So what is Lebolo? I said the same word we use for whether it's singular or plural, and the Customary Marriages Act defines it. So as bride price or dowry, and I explained to you what it means. So it is the groom or his family pays a negotiated sum of money. It can be cash money, or it can be goods, maybe livestock like cattle, to the bride's family for several reasons. And that includes a token of respect and appreciation for raising her. Maybe she's educated. Maybe she's already had a child, because in terms of customary law, having a child beforehand shows that you've got childbearing capacity or childbearing potential. So now the process, the practice of lobola is part of the process of getting married under customary law. It is not the marriage itself. So it is, the majority of Africans follow it, but it is thus not the marriage itself. So if lobola is not paid, according to, it may or may not have legal implications for succession and inheritance. According to the Marriage Act, the Customary Marriage Act, non-payment of lobola does not affect the validity of the marriage or the recognition of the marriage. But according to living customary law, it does. So on paper, it's not a requirement, but according to the practice of people, it is very important. And therefore, this is why this fatwa was introduced, because the families are saying, although this may not invalidate your customary marriage, it could affect the couple's social standing within the community. They could be ostracized or excluded from the community and its activities. So this is what it is. So the living customary law sees non-payment of lobola as a breach of the marriage contract, and it could have legal consequences for the brides, for the husband and his wife. So the bride's family will not recognize the marriage, and it will affect the rights of them. When their children are born from a customary marriage where lobola was not paid, while the South African law recognizes the children as legitimate and can inherit from parents, such non-payment of lobola may affect the rights of the children to inherit from the extended family, especially on the father's side. So this fatwa on lobola was released by the African ulama 10 months ago, because they saw it as a real problem affecting its Muslim followers. And they sort of took the bull by the horns by addressing it rather than turning a blind eye and dismissing it. So they introduced this fatwa. Now we know a fatwa is a non-binding guideline, but it's a ruling, it's a legal opinion, and this fatwa was based on Islamic sources and legal principles. In other words, it was based on the Sharia. So they sought to see Islam as a religion, as an inclusive religion that celebrates this African tradition of lobola, because it maintains family ties between Muslim and non-Muslim families. So although the man may have converted to Islam, his family, his mother and father, his grandparents, and etc., brothers and sisters might still be Christian or non-Muslim. So therefore, they are saying that to keep family ties with these non-Muslim relations, they will allow lobola, and they have based it on Islamic jurisprudence and Islamic sources in motivation. But until this fatwa, little attention has been given to the intersection between Islam as a religion and the cultural and customary traditions of indigenous Black Muslims living in South Africa. So although so we have now what we see, transaction prior to marriage. Lobola is a negotiation between families, and it's normally concluded in a letter or an agreement that they will say, this is the lobola. It can be prompt and deferred, like the mahar. It can be paid immediately or it can be paid later. So this couple, they could be Muslim, but also African. The families could be African. So we are saying our constitution recognizes legal pluralism. It equally recognizes the right to practice your religion and your culture. So now we are saying if a couple wants into a nikah, they also want their cultural traditions and customs to apply. Therefore, they negotiate the lobola. So I explained to you how this lobola is. It can, we have sort of pre-agreements of this lobola. Unlike a mahar in South Africa, it's just a one line in a marriage certificate where they say this is the dower, or they will say this is the dower agreed between parties. So you might not even know what the mahar is, like the gold coin or or it could be just privately between the parties. So nobody is really proof what the mahar is, unlike customary law, where they will negotiate it, their families will be present, and they will know this. So this is an expensive thing now. It's a connotation. What is this meaning of this connotation for a nikah? It means that the mahar is due to the bride. This is a part of a marriage, a Muslim marriage, and therefore the husband has to pay the mahar to the bride and lobola to the family of the bride. So he has to pay twice. So he's expected, African Muslim groom is expected to pay both, and this is non-negotiable because one is based on culture and one is mandatory based on religion. So therefore, this is basically what it means, and the effect of this mahar. So as we know in Islam, mahar is contractually payable to the bride by the groom and is therefore a non-taxable debt in the estate upon death or divorce. But that is not the case with lobola, because it's not something between the couple. It is something between the groom and the bride's family, a contract between the groom and the bride's family. It's got nothing to do with the couple's matrimonial property or their estate in their property. This contract doesn't terminate by death or divorce of the spouse. And like, for example, mahar is a debt against the estate of the husband should he die, and the wife can claim her a deferred dower or any unpaid dower. But this is not the case with lobola, because it's not between the spouses, and therefore it is quite burdensome then for an African groom, especially since it has no basis in Islam. So, but the brides and the bride's father and family, the non-Muslim relations, may be saying, if you don't do this, then we do not recognize your marriage. In our eyes, you are not married. And although you might be married in terms of a nikah, now the nikah is not recognized in South Africa, so it's a double prejudice for women in this type of situations. So this is what they are saying. The wife's family, the bride's family might also say, because the husband or his family didn't practice lobola, when your husband dies, he's not recognized as your husband, and therefore you cannot bury him, and the wife is not related to the husband's family, nor will she inherit from him, but she and her children will retain her family's name and custody of the children. So customary law also has different rules of succession, which is applied in South Africa. So in a nutshell then, the fatwa provides that the payment of lobola is permissible, although it is not compulsory, to maintain family ties if families require it. But nikah and lobola are two separate processes. The payment of lobola to the family does not replace the payment of the mahar, and ultimately, the non-payment of a lobola does not affect the validity of the nikah, as it would, for example, in the case of an African customary marriage. So although both marriages are potentially polygynous, and lobola and da'wah can be prompt and deferred, one is based on religion and the other on custom. So the application of the fatwa is basically in interracial Muslim marriages. In this application are not excluded, but I work from the assumption in the examples I've given you that both parties to the nikah might, for example, be Black African and understand the cultural practice, but we can see one party cannot necessarily be Black African. And relatives don't also only need to be non-Muslim, because they can also be Muslim, but still want to practice their customary, African customary traditions. So Islam does not discriminate on the basis of race, and South Africa has, since democracy, removed all racially discriminatory legislation. So even the customary marriages act that recognizes the marriages can apply to anyone wishing to make use of it. So this is quite a mouthful. I will stop here and I will answer some questions.
Okay, thank you so much. It was an interesting topic. I think we have similar problem to the Africa in terms of lobola here in Indonesia, particularly in South Sulawesi. In 2012, I was conducted also research on the same topic related to mahar and sundrang. Sundrang is customary law here, while mahar or it's religious Sharia law. and also we have misunderstanding. Society misunderstood which one is mahar and which one is like kind of labor. So yeah, we have research on the book is published on 2018, and then it cover the practice of dowry throughout Indonesia from Aceh, Sumatra, Jawa, Lombok, and South Sulawesi. And I am one of the writer on the topic of dowry in Makassar, which is I'm so happy that you deliver the topic. So let me explain.
Maybe I can just explain. We also have dowry in South Africa amongst Muslims because it is based on Indonesian, Malaysian culture and Indian culture. So the dowry is paid by the bride's father to the bride's family to the bride, for example, before she gets married. When she gets married, it's like a trousseau, they give you wedding gifts and jewelry and things like that. But that is different from the mahar, so we also have the practice of dowry.
Here in Indonesia, the groom family paid to the bride family as the establishment of the family, the new family. And also they paid another mahar as a Sharia law. So let me explain to the audience. I would like to speak Bahasa Indonesia a little bit. Topik hari ini itu tentang uang, mirip-mirip dengan uang panai, mirip-mirip dengan sundrang, dan mirip-mirip dengan sompah kalau di orang Bugis. Dan yang menariknya, orang-orang Muslim juga menghadapi hal yang sama di South Africa. I would like to invite, saya mengundang para audiens untuk bertanya berkaitan dengan topik. I would like to invite you all to ask questions related to the topic. Probably some problems that you want to ask some questions related to the interracial marriage, also related to the fatwa. Probably you can also mention some problem in Indonesia to compare to the South African problem. Silahkan audience. Saya cek dulu. I will check the chat.
Cek.
Yep. Ada yang mau bertanya?
Ya. Subhan Halik. Kembali.
Subhan Halik.
Ya.
Oh, here we have Pak Subhan Halik.
Ya.
Pak Subhan Halik have some questions. Silakan Pak.
Tapi mohon maaf ini saya tidak bisa ungkapkan dengan bahasa Inggris. Nanti namanya ini idenya itu hilang kalau saya berbahasa Inggris.
Okay, I will translate as semampu saya. Ya.
Jadi begini, saya kenal Ibu Najma Musa ini pada saat ICSIS yang kedua, di mana beliau ini membawakan materi tentang Syekh Yusuf. Nah, sekaitan dengan materi yang dibawakan pada hari ini, saya ingin bertanya, adakah pengaruh fatwa atau pengaruh pemikiran Syekh Yusuf terhadap uang panai yang ada di Afrika Selatan ini? Nah, mungkin maksudnya setelah jawaban itu kita dapatkan, kalau ada barangkali menurut hemat saya bisa kemudian kita melakukan parallel study dengan hukum Islam yang ada di Sulawesi Selatan maupun di Sulawesi Selatan pada umumnya. Karena boleh dikata kajian hukum kita di Sulawesi Selatan ini tentu banyak dipengaruhi oleh ulama-ulama kita terdahulu. Dan Syekh Yusuf ini kan termasuk salah seorang penegak pondasi keagamaan di Sulawesi Selatan. Artinya apa? Korelatif study ini kemungkinan besar bisa membuktikan adanya keterhubungan antara dua produk hukum ini. Itu barangkali. Kasih.
Maksudnya mahar atau sompah? Yang dibawa
mahar,
Syekh Yusuf ke
Ya, karena bicara
South
tentang
Africa.
mahar dan sompa itu sebenarnya itu bicara tentang satu paket belanja itu ya, satu paket belanja yang kita bicarakan dalam membicarakan hukum perkawinan di Sulawesi Selatan. Maksud saya, kalau di Afrika Selatan ini bagaimana prakteknya? Nah, adakah pengaruh dari pemikiran Syekh Yusuf di sana? Kalau ada, bisa jadi. Ya, bisa jadi apa yang terjadi sekarang ini di Sulawesi Selatan itu sekaitan dengan apa yang ada di Afrika Selatan. Itu sebabnya kalau itu terjadi, saya ingin menawarkan kita melakukan parallel study untuk dua negara ini agar supaya kita bisa melahirkan karya internasional lagi. Itu barangkali.
Okay. Do I have to translate it? Okay, I think I have to translate it. So Pak Subhan Halik said that Syekh Yusuf has a great influence on both Sulawesi Selatan, South Sulawesi, and also on South Africa.
Ada yang mau bertanya juga?
Oh, let me translate first.
Ada yang mau bertanya?
Boleh saya translate dulu ya?
Ya, silakan. Silakan.
And Syekh Yusuf established the Sharia law in South Sulawesi, and is there in South Africa. Syekh Yusuf also has a great influence in establishing the Sharia law. They introduced the Sharia law to the community. If Syekh Yusuf established also the Sharia or introduced also the Sharia law in South Sulawesi, probably that UIN and also South Africa University, Pak Subhan offer a collaboration research that can parallel the establishment based on the influence of Syekh Yusuf on the establishment of or the introduction of Sharia law. Can you get it?
Yes.
You know.
Yes. So to answer the first part of your question, did Sheikh Yusuf influence Sharia in Cape Town, South Africa? Well, it cannot be proved with certainty because Sheikh Yusuf was held in isolation. You know, he was held far away from other people, and although he was the largest community of Muslims in South Africa at that time, it was 49 people altogether. So it was like a Shafi congregation. Amongst the congregation, he could have influenced Islam, but we cannot prove because of his isolation whether he had influence, because when he was in Cape Town, South Africa, he did not write any more books or anything. You know, he was quite old. He was quite ill at the time, for example, and before he came to Cape Town, he was already of a certain age. So we cannot say that for certain, but it's definitely the Indonesian link is definitely there because we have many other people that followed Sheikh Yusuf after that. And we are also in the process of trying to have a memorandum of understanding between your university, for example, and our universities as far as Sheikh Yusuf is concerned, because this is quite an important aspect of our history linking the two countries. So when South Africa celebrated its democracy, it was its intention to establish this link. So I'm very proud to say that these conferences that we are having, these are the links also between the two institutions and South Africa, as far as Sheikh Yusuf, for example, is concerned. And this is the first time that this has happened since 1993, when we just got out of apartheid and into democracy. You know, so this is very pleasing to know that this is the case. You know, this was the intention, and now we can do it further. When I come, for example, to Indonesia shortly, we will try to make contacts in areas of comparison that we can both share, for example, history and other areas that our faculties have, and that we can have this collaboration between the two countries, which is very important.
Oh, we have another questions here from Bapak Padewakang, Penny Sutiawati from UNM, Universitas Negeri Makassar. The question is there any impact on the social life of South Africa? I'm not sure what kind of the impact, probably the impact of fatwa. And what is the impact that people experience in South Africa related to the fatwa?
So this fatwa is a new fatwa, so we can't really look at the impact, but what it is telling us that traditional ulama, for example, ulama that's schooled in Saudi Arabia, Pakistan, traditional ulama are basically people who studied in Makkah, Saudi Arabia. Some have also gone to Indonesia, but mostly Pakistan, India. So they have got one set of ideas, you know. So because South Africa was always under apartheid, which means separate development, races were kept apart. There was very little mixing between Muslims and Africans, for example, because we had to stay in separate areas. All people of certain race were grouped together. So race had a very big impact on this. But now, because there's no racial discrimination in South Africa, we are seeing more and more Muslims, African people, indigenous African people becoming Muslim. They are embracing Islam and they're converting to Islam, and they are also getting married to Muslim women, for example. Very few Muslim women, you know, a Muslim woman cannot get married to a non-Muslim man unless he converts to Islam. So that is the issue. That is why these conversions are taking place. But it is slowly this is changing in South Africa, and traditional ulama will have to get used to it. So this fatwa was very interesting because it was introduced by indigenous black ulama. Without, it's not clear how the traditional, if they have consulted with traditional ulama, because traditional ulama did not take this seriously. You know, they did not take the custom of the black people seriously, and therefore the black ulama said, but this is our culture, this is our custom, and we need to, our people want to do this because it impacts on our family lives, and therefore we will introduce this fatwa. So this fatwa was by black people, by black ulama, and not necessarily by traditional ulama who might be Indian or Indonesian or things like that, backgrounds. So this is very interesting. It's also like a divide between ulama. So in other words, it is telling traditional ulama, you have to come to the party. This is the problems we are facing. Our youth and our generations need to preserve our culture, and this is one way of doing it. So this is basically slowly happening in South Africa. We don't know how many, how this will impact, but the fact is that they were brave enough to issue this fatwa. And now it seems like the traditional ulama have made no objections to it. They accept it because they realize that in South Africa, the constitution guarantees you the right to practice your religion and to practice your culture. And there's no discrimination based on race. So that is interesting.
Oh, very interesting. Pak Dewaka, any more questions, Pak Subhan, or any audience? I think the answer is clear. But I want to add a little bit, because when I went to the field of study, I was as anthropologist at that time, not as a Muslim scholar. So I tried to see the side of people who practice the law. And then when I met the religious, the ulama, like Pak Subhan, they tend to say that sundrang is the same as mahar, but in practice, people in the field identify that sundrang is for the family, while mahar is for the bride. So when we come to the court, when someone comes to the court to access the right to the mahar or to the sundrang, it will be a problem, because sundrang can be a piece of land, and it's a big land, it's expensive. When the woman want to divorce from the husband, do they have to bring that big land? So it is a big consideration, and until now become a problem in the field. So I think this is very interesting topic, and we have a record on this book.
Yes, I would like to have is the book only in Indonesian language, or is it in English?
It is in English, published in Braille, and it's about the
Okay.
problem of how women access to the property right after the divorce, and also about mahar in Indonesia.
Yes, I will ask Taufik Mata to send me the title.
Okay.
And then I can also look at it when I come to Indonesia, inshallah. I will be coming to Indonesia soon.
Mhm.
And then I will also have a look. And I hope to meet you also,
Oh,
inshallah.
thank you so much.
Yeah.
So, and also we have Wang Panaik, which is a new term, I think. Wang Panaik is a new term.
What is it?
Uang Panaik.
Okay,
Uang Panaik.
okay.
Uang mean money that the groom bring to pay the party.
Yes,
It's a
yes.
sum large of money, can be million.
Yes.
Like you said that this is based on the level of the women and the family of the women. It's
Yeah.
based on the location or the social location of the women.
Yes. Yes. Even with the mahar in South Africa, women are not aware of their rights, that a mahar can be as an economic tool. So they will ask for a few rupiahs, for example, for mahar, which is very little, because when they get divorced, then they have nothing, you know. So to educate women that mahar can be also according to your, you know, what the family can afford and things like that. And also when couples get married, they usually start out with very little, but as the marriage grows and they increase their wealth, the husband can also increase the mahar later. You know, he doesn't have to give a substantial mahar at the beginning, because a mahar can be prompt and deferred by agreement by parties. Even the wife can say, okay, I don't want so much mahar, but economically it is her right, you know, so it is something that she should remember. But it is becoming a problem in the world now also, where families are expecting high amounts of mahar, and the dower, that is the dower, but also for dowry, you know. People want a lot of things from the family, expectations with weddings and nikahs and walimas. But interestingly, I heard that in Iran they have what we call a milk price, like milk. And there that is also, it's not the mahar, but it's something like the labolo, equivalent to the labolo, which you have also indicated to me you also have equivalent, you know. So it's interesting to see that cultural practices all over in Muslim societies are also as important as their religious practices, you know. Yeah.
So, audience, any other questions? I think this is very interesting because this has been a problem here, and many people talk about it, and maybe many people are afraid about it.
Yes.
Especially men.
That is why we say there's this living law, which the people actually live in their daily lives, but which the ulama don't want to recognize, you know. Many other things too in the community, you know, that ulama is always bent on the traditional Saudi versions of Islamic law, Sharia, you know. So we have the Hanafi and the Shafi schools, which are predominant here. So, you know, with the mahar also, the Hanafi law and the Shafi law also differ. So that is also issues, but that is not so important now, you know. So, but it's interesting that the Labola, because many people didn't even know about this fatwa, you know, and still don't know about the fatwa. So I think it is important, given our context, our historical context of race division in this country, that it is important that we take note of these customs and culture.
Oh, we have another questions here.
Okay.
Baik.
Let me translate it. What about the solution because labolo is negotiation. So is there any agreement between women and men, between bride and the groom, about the amount of money that they have to pay?
Mm. So this is very interesting. You know, I said it can. Interestingly, what is happening in South Africa is that the African woman, she might be educated, and the husband might not have enough money. You know, so she will pay the lobola, but the lobola is supposed to be paid by the groom to the wife's family. So the wife now is taking the responsibility because she's saying she's emancipated, she can afford it, she can do it. So the male might say he's emasculated, you know, I'm no longer the head here, you are trying to take over my role. But this is interesting because it is happening recently, you know, and many people don't know about this. So the women are even doing the payment to keep the culture up, you know. So this is very interesting.
Yes.
Yeah.
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 So
Might be difficult for the man to accept, but it is happening, you know. And the people might say, yes, but polygyny, it's discriminatory to women. But the fact is, it is allowed in South Africa. It is legal in South Africa, and it will also be for Muslim marriages, you know. And it just means that if a man has more than one wife, he's got to pay more lobola, and he has got to pay more mahar to each wife, and to each family he will have to pay labolo, and each family wife he has to pay a different mahar. So it's an expensive exercise for a Muslim man who wants to take more than one wife in terms of his custom or his religion.
I think the topic is more interesting, and one participant would like to ask question.
Yes.
Silakan Pak Taufik Matar.
Baik,
Okay, Taufik.
Ibu mohon ditranslate. Apakah di
Okay.
Afrika Selatan itu apabila ada kita ingin melakukan sebuah pernikahan, baru ada uang panaiknya, baru kita ingin menikahi orang yang lebih tinggi derajatnya, apakah itu uang panaiknya lebih tinggi ataukah ada yang sudah ditentukan?
Okay.
Terima
Saya
kasih.
translate. Okay. The question is, if someone from the groom from the low rank of the family, and intend to marriage to a bride from the high level, the high rank of the family, how about the labolo? Is it higher, or is it affect the amount of labolo they have to pay?
Yes, so if we use the example now of where, for example, as a young couple getting married and the wife is educated, then they will expect the labolo to be more, you know, for the value of the and normally it's just like in Islam, you know, what is the sunnah of the Prophet? He says that you marry people for 4 reasons, you know, for their beauty, for their wealth, for their lineage, you know, their family and their religion, you know. So for us, the most important aspect is supposed to be your religion. You're supposed to be Muslim, you know, you should be a good Muslim. But today, that is not the case. They look at, of course, what does the husband do? What does his family do? What is his wealth and stuff? So people tend to marry according to their status, you know. And therefore, according to if the woman has had a child before the time, like in Labolo, then that means she has childbearing capacity, like the fruits of the marriage. And therefore, they have better expectation than somebody, for example, in African customary law, there's also the case if the woman cannot have children, then the husband, then she can marry another woman to have children, you know. So the woman marrying another woman, but it's not a sexual relationship. So the customary law is very intricate, very complicated. But the point is that I would imagine that people of different social backgrounds, and it's just like Muslims as well, where people expect a large mahar from somebody, which is unreasonable and what you call it, un-Islamic, for example. But depending if people can afford it, they can afford it. So there are many different cultures in South Africa, different tribes, and we also have traditional ulama and traditional courts. We have traditional African customary courts besides our own Islamic Sharia tribunals. So ultimately, I think yes, it would impact on the amount of mahar. It depends on what the wife. But remember, Labolo is not what the wife wants. It's what the wife's family wants. So it can be cattle. They can ask for many cattle, many sheep, many cows, many money. They can ask for lots of money. They also ask for gifts, like wine and other things. So because remember, it's non-Muslim relations that is basically asking for this Labolo. Yeah, I hope that answers the question.
I think the audience can relate it, your explanation to what men mostly experience here in Makassar, because when they intend to marriage a woman, sometimes people say if the woman is graduated from master degree or doctoral degree or even undergraduate degree, they have different level of mahar or wang panaik.
Yes,
So
makes it very difficult.
Yeah. It's very complicated.
Yeah.
So, is there any response to the audience? I have to check gimana Pak Topik? Apakah kita lanjutkan?
Ya, boleh dilanjutkan, Karos.
Oh ya.
For me, I have a question to Prof. Najma. Yeah.
Okay, silakan.
Thank you, Prof, for coming in our the third ICSIS. Yeah. Inshallah, you will be welcoming here in Makassar next couple days. My question is this fatwa is recent, right? So no popularized, not socialized to the whole South Africa population. My question is, how if this fatwa no to whole population, especially for Muslim people in South Africa, how do they react to have this fatwa? Thank you, Prof.
Yeah, because there was little publicity around the fatwa until it was released, but then it was released, there's YouTube videos, there's WhatsApp, Facebook, all these. This is how they released the fatwa, this is what they did. So it came as a surprise to many people. We didn't know there was going to be this fatwa, but it's something that they were thinking about, that they were exploring, and then they decided that this is what they're going to do and issue this fatwa. So it's almost like it was a fatwa by traditional ulama. Wasn't really, I don't know which traditional ulama was consulted, because the fatwa itself, the document doesn't say that any traditional ulama was cited. There's about 11 people that was part of this fatwa, and all the signatories are Black African. There's no traditional ulama like normally you have national ulama bodies, in South Africa that oversees all the different provinces in South Africa, and they have membership, also of these bodies. But this fatwa just came as a surprise to me, at least, and that is when I saw it and I followed up. I actually contacted them. I want the fatwa. They told me, I heard that it was going to happen, but they told me, no, I have to wait till it's released. And when it was released, I managed to get a copy of this fatwa, and that is how I could examine it and see who was the signatories, who were the people that signed it, who were the people that participated. But this is the reason that they are saying they've consulted, they've looked at the Islamic sources, ijma, consensus, they've reached consensus that this is something that affects the community, and therefore it is for the greater good. It is more good than
Tapi
bad to have this, and it is not compulsory. It is just a recommendation, because a fatwa is a legal ruling that is not binding. You don't have to follow it if you don't want to, but they encourage it to maintain, and the reason is, the main motivation is that it maintains family ties.
okay, thank you, Prof.
I hope that answers your question,
Yes,
Taufiq.
Prof. The offline audience is eager to know how much the average price of lebolo.
Well,
Yeah,
just like
they eager want to know
just
here
like a
compared
like
to
a
uang panai
mahar.
here.
Yeah, it could be as little as I mean, they are selling Lobolo contracts for about 100 rand, which is like five to $10. You know, it costs to buy a ready-made contract for Lobolo to tell you all the rules you must follow. But Lobolo can be anything from very little, you know, from very little. Just like the mahar, from very little to very high, you know.
Thank you, Prof. Thank you, Kak Ros.
Apakah waktunya masih ada?
We still have 8 minutes left.
Okay, we have 8 minutes left. Any more questions? Saya yang mau bertanya. I have a questions.
Okay.
Do you think that the encounter between Sharia law and the customary law affect to the society in the good term or in the bad term?
I think it's a good sense, because at least it's recognition. It's recognition that there is, and if you want to increase the Muslim population in South Africa, and the Black African are the majority of the population, and if they can come to Islam and see that Islam doesn't reject their ways, their customs, their cultures, it's just like every community. We are all sociable people. We also celebrate things. We also have feasts. We also have all these same things. You know, there's very more common things than not common things. You know, but the most problem here was racial discrimination. You know, it's not very common for there to be intermarriage between Black people and other Muslim people. So it's very uncommon, you know. And even Nelson Mandela, he had proposed to a Muslim woman. Did you know that before he married his last wife, he had proposed to a Muslim woman and she rejected him. But imagine Mandela married this Muslim woman. Can you imagine what it would have meant for Islam? You know?
Yeah.
But I know this woman, and I know that he had proposed to her, but she had said no, you know, because she didn't want to get married to him, you know, but they were good friends, you know, political allies and friends. But I think it's a good thing, because more and more people are converting to Islam in South Africa, Black people, and that is a good thing for Islam, you know. And but Islam, like it is practiced here, is based on basically, you can say, traditional ulama, like Indian ulama or Indonesian ulama. But what about African ulama? There's very few. If you look at the composition in the Western Cape, I asked the Muslim Judicial Council in the Western Cape, how many of your ulama are Black? And a very small number, you know, are members of the ulama, you know. So they are also being educated, and what is happening, they also get educated in traditional ways. But this is the first time they spoke up and said no, but our custom is also important, our culture is important, and we want, and they introduced us fatwa. They took the initiative, which was, I think, was very brave and was a very good sign that we are moving forward, you know. Yeah.
Thank you so much. I think there is no more questions from the audience.
Okay. Yes, Ros.
Yes. Pak Zainal, ada
Yeah.
apa?
I want to ask you.
Me. my mahar.
How about your
Okay.
mahar?
I expected the question.
Okay, okay.
I have some
Let me
fun.
address to Prof. Najma Musa.
Okay, silakan.
This the second time we meet Prof. Najma Musa, and we do hope she speaking here right now in this room, but yeah, mendahului jadwalnya yang akan datang Juni. Jadwal ini.
Okay.
Okay. Saya tadi mendengar, I hear that there is from Najma apa black ulama?
Black ulama, yes.
Black ulama? Or I mean, is there white ulama? because if there are kinds or two kinds of community of ulama will influence the product, the view of ulama. I mean, it's like Indonesia, there are two most community, namely ulama Nahdlatul Ulama, NUN, Muhammadiyah. The both influence the view of Sharia law, especially in say mahar, and then fatwa influence the audience, the community. Apakah ini juga ada di Singapura, atau adakah NU dan Muhammadiyah di apa namanya, di South Africa? Is the NU and Muhammadiyah in South Africa? Oke, saya kira itu yang pertanyaan saya. Tapi ada additional ada pertanyaan tambahan dari audiens. Apakah berbeda antara mahar pertama dan mahar kedua dan seterusnya?
Oh, okay. Okay, I get it.
Okay, thank you.
So let me
We
translate
wait
it.
for Najma Musa here.
Okay.
Ya, assalamualaikum.
But Sehna was
Okay.
wondering about the white and the black, the black ulama, and then he was wondering, is there any white ulama? If there any, is the fatwa influence the white community and the black community? Like in Indonesia, there are two communities which is not divided based on the race, but based on organization. There are Nahdlatul Ulama and there are Muhammadiyah. And then Muhammadiyah influence Muhammadiyah community, but do not influence the NU community, and Nahdlatul Ulama influence Nahdlatul Ulama community, but was not heard by the Muhammadiyah community. And the second question, the other question is the mahar or labolo. I'm not sure which he refers to. But if someone wants to marry to the second, the third, or the fourth wife, is labolo have the same quantity or different?
Okay, so about the first question, it's unfortunate that we have to talk about black ulama and white ulama and Indian ulama, but unfortunately, South Africa still uses that racial classifications in their population demographies, and in if we are also I don't know what you call it, like Bumiputra, the black people get preference for jobs, get preference for things because of apartheid. South Africa was for many years separate development. So unfortunately, we were divided into a racial classification. However, when it comes to ulama, so we see that the majority of the population is black, followed by colored, followed by white and Indian. So it's very racially classified. So the colored community is mixed. So it could be a mixture because they got married between black and white people. Marriages between black and white people produce colored people, for example. Unfortunately, you have to use these terms, But unfortunately, Islam in South Africa is seen to be an elitist religion. You know, the religion of the Indians, the religion of the Malay Indonesians. It's religion of those people, you know. But now Islam is beginning to be, and we have white ulama, you know, they are a small minority. I mean, they are already a minority, but we have few ulama, imams of mosques and imams of that are white, for example, but they still have the same traditional training, Saudi-based training, Pakistan, India. They went to, you know, where they got the education from, for example. But now they are also being trained in South Africa, but initially they were trained elsewhere, you know. So, and unfortunately, that is the case, that we have racial distinctions. And it is unfortunate also that Islam is seen as an Indian religion, for example, you know, or seen as a Muslims are, because the majority of the Muslims were non-white, but not black African. But that numbers are increasing, you know. So many people are converting to Islam. So we cannot, it's un-Islamic to talk about racial distinctions, but that is unfortunately the situation in South Africa, you know, where we have that. And when the second, I hope that answered the first question. The second question was, what if the man marries more than one wife? Is that what you said? What was the second question? I can't hear you.
The
Okay,
amount of
Erika.
labolo that
Yeah.
men give to the woman for the second, the first, the second, and the third, and so on marriage, the
Yes.
amount is still the same, or?
No. It's not like Islam where you must have equality between the wives. That is an interesting question. I wonder if when it comes to mahar, that women can say we want the same mahar as the first wife, we want the same treatment. No, I don't know about that. But when it comes to labolo, that interestingly, if it was different, if it was a marriage between the two parties, right? Then we would say if the man takes another wife, then all African marriages are in community of property. In other words, they share 50-50 in the estate, and in when on death or divorce, 50% between two partners, right? But when it comes to labolo, it's got nothing to do with the marriage. The bolo is between the wife's family and the husband. It's a contract outside of the marriage. It's got nothing to do with the marriage, right? So how they negotiate that, and of course a new labolo will have to be negotiated for every new marriage, you know? But that's got nothing to do with the existing marriage, you know? The law for the marriages is different. It protects the wife, you know? If the man wants to take another wife, then the estate can be divided and he will have to, from his half, pay for a new marriage or things like that, you know. But the wife's property and the wife's thing stays intact. So that is, but the problem is the marriage must be registered. There's certain requirements. And part of the registration of an African marriage is the Nebolo negotiation must be put in at the time of the registration. In that way, it can be protected. But remember, it's got nothing to do with the wife. It is got to do with the husband and the wife's family, you know. So that is the difference. Whereas mahar is a right of the wife, and upon death or divorce, or then the marriage, that wife's right to mahar is a debt against the estate and takes primary consideration. It must first be paid to the wife before any other debts or inheritance can be paid out to heirs, for example. So that is the difference. One is based on religion and one is based on culture and tradition. I hope that answers the question.
Okay. Wow, we got a lot of questions today. So it's already 8 hours, 8 minutes past. So I think I would like to conclude the meeting by a short statement that after hearing the explanation, the questions, I think what makes me wonder today is women everywhere, in any culture, any race, is always special. They have a special position and always become the honor of the family, the community and the rest. So that's I can say, and that I can feel that woman always has a price in agriculture, everywhere.
Yeah.
And
And it's women who keeps a society intact. It is women who uphold these traditions. It's women who maintain. Even for the women, African women now want to pay the lobolo. That means they want to preserve the culture. You know, they want to maintain the culture. So that is good, because with every custom in our society, it is women who maintain the relations and the customs. You know, and I think that applies to. You are quite correct when you are saying that.
So the women here is the barrier of the culture, the protection of the culture. And the culture also protect the women.
Yes. And like polygyny, for example, if a woman does not marry a married man, then there will be no polygyny, right? If a woman stops it, a woman can stop it. If she doesn't marry a man who's already married, there will be no polygyny. There will be no polygamy.
So it's really
depends
always
the women. Yeah. So it's the women who holds the power, but also who makes their own sometimes oppression. You know. Yeah.
Okay. So. Wow. Okay. Thank you so much, Professor Najma. We're really glad to have you here, and that the topic is really interesting. We are waiting you. We are waiting you here, and then talk more about the topic, and then we can compare what you know from the South Africa and what we experience here in South Sulawesi.
Yes, inshallah. I would like to have a copy of your book, inshallah.
Inshallah.
If you have it available.
Oh yeah. It's available in Amazon, I think.
Okay. But I should get the title.
I'm not sure. Because I work with the American anthropologist, Professor John R. Bowen.
Yes. Tawfiq Matar will send me the details, inshallah. Then I can check it up, inshallah.
All right. Inshallah,
okay, thank you so much. And then also the participants, the audience, thank you very much for your participation, for the very interesting questions. And we would like to say thank you to Professor Najma, and we would like to say goodbye. And we would like
Thank you very much. Terima kasih.
Terima kasih. We give applause to Prof. Najma Musa.
It's very cold in Cape Town. Ice cold here. It's winter.
Oh,
so it's very cold here.
Oh, very cold in South Africa right now.
Alhamdulillah.
Yeah.
I'm glad. Yeah.
Okay.
So terima kasih and Assalamualaikum.
Waalaikumsalam.
Waalaikumsalam.
Thank you, Prof. Najma. We will continue our parallel discussion.
Kita applaud kepada
Salam.
Profesor. Okay. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Thank you Kak Ros. Kami lanjut paralel presentasinya.
Saya boleh keluar?
Boleh. Silakan Kak Ros. Terima kasih.
Recording stopped.